Hello everyone, welcome to the webinar Beyond the Hype. I'm thrilled to have you here, and in this webinar we're going to talk about whether artificial intelligence is experiencing an iPhone moment, whether it's going to change the world or if all the excitement that we're seeing is just hype. In this session, we're going to talk about capabilities that artificial intelligence has right now that nobody seems to be noticing. We're going to talk about why content creation does not change the world, but decision making by AI does. We'll discuss why today's AI, the technologies being hyped this year, are different than previous technologies. And I'll give you my 3 predictions of what's going to happen with this new technology over the next year or two. It's stormy outside, but it's sunny in here. So let's dive in. Well, thanks everybody for coming here. Let's dive right in. Beyond content creation, AI hasn't changed the world yet. Content creation, it's very impressive, but by itself, it doesn't warrant the incredible amount of interest and investment that AI has received in 2023. Creating video and music and pictures and blog posts and writing our emails, it's all great. It's all very impressive. These photos that have come out that have tricked professional judges and won competitions, it's amazing. But in the end, content creation by itself, it's not a revolution. It doesn't change the world. There are AI capabilities right now. They're available right now that would change the entire face of software development. But they're not being used because there's a paradigm shift that's required by designers and engineers. That shift, though, is going to come soon. So the future's here. We are finally entering that age, that new age that we've all been expecting for some time. The way humans interact with machines is going to change substantially and rapidly. This futuristic way of interacting with machines, it was embodied by Jarvis in Iron Man, Griot in the Black Panther, and you see on the slide GPT from OpenAI. Now this slide, it's surprising for me to see this. It feels like, no, this is all futuristic stuff, it's all sci-fi fantasy, but really the technology is now here through GPT to make the first iteration of these kind of machines that interact with humans this way, to make them possible. Hopefully by the end of this presentation, you might agree with me. So why me? Why this webinar? At the ACA Summit this year in Las Vegas, Ron Weissman, now the ACA chair, he had a keynote called Through the Crystal Ball. And in there, in the what's coming up in the future, what we should be looking at, there were a few slides on the topic of AI. And in there, Ron asked the question, is this AI's iPhone moment, or is this all a bubble? When you look at the finances, when you look at the charts, it looks like a bubble compared to other ones that we've seen recently. But I feel like Ron's question, is this an iPhone moment, that really captured the feeling of angel investors. We're looking at this going, is this something to get into, or do we stay away? My experience in the investor community, in the angel community, has been that there isn't a lot of talks and sessions that get behind the scenes and really look at technology. At the summit itself, I think there was 1 or 2 talks on AI. They were focused on a specific industry or specific kind of thing. They weren't really a general explanation or discussion about the hype that we've been seeing. In the end, why me? AI is software. It's built and integrated by software engineers. So this presentation is about helping you see through a software developer's eyes to judge the validity, the viability, and the quality of the technology that we're seeing. So think back to when Bitcoin first was released in 2009. Did you have a software engineer review the Bitcoin or the blockchain specification and give you their opinion on whether it was viable? And would your investment decision have changed if they told you that Bitcoin could never become a dominant global currency, or that the specification for blockchain would prevent it from living up to the hype? That's what this presentation is, or that's what I hope it'll be. I want to give you a behind the scenes look at the hype that's happening this year to help you evaluate the quality and the viability of the new technologies that we're all being introduced to. So there are a few things I want to get on the same page first. First is that at the beginning of this year, there was just an explosion of AI. When we started noticing all the information, there's all these articles and news reports about ChatGPT. If you went to YouTube and searched for AI, you would have seen 100 videos saying, here's 7 new AIs that are better than ChatGPT. It seemed like just some switch had flipped, and all of a sudden, AI technologies were coming out like crazy. Now, the secret to that is it's really one technology underlying technology called generative AI that's driving all of that. Generative AI means it's generating something new. It's not like the older AI technologies, which are looking through data and finding things and pulling them out of that. Generative is it's making images, it's making music, it's writing blogs, it's creating text for us. And then one step further, ChatGPT and the things that are powering stuff like Notion and Tactic and WordPress and those different things, those are called a large language model, or LLM. And that's really where all the hype is. Pictures and stuff, like I said, that's not a revolution. It's really cool. It will change some things. It helps us be more efficient. But what's really the hype, what's really going on here are the large language models. And the one that's really driving that is GPT-4. Now, I have on this screen Claude as well. And Claude is kind of a dark horse. When I first started thinking about this back in May at the summit, the only engine that would have been on that slide would be GPT-4. But just recently, Claude has really started to become, it's really the dark horse. It's by a company called Anthropic. It's already received Google backing for about $450 million. And just yesterday, an article came out noting that Amazon has pledged $4 billion to them and that they're in talks with Google for another $2 billion. So it's very new. Their chatbot just came out in July. I don't have access to the beta API yet, so I can't say anything from firsthand knowledge, but it looks really promising when looking at the benchmarks that they've run it through, when looking at the information that's put out about it. It looks like it might rival GPT-4. And there's probably a reason for that. The company was founded in 2021 by ex-OpenAI employees, the folks who were working on the earlier versions of GPT. So it just came out. If you want to know more about it and where that's going, email me in about a month. By then, I should have actually been able to look at it myself and see, does this compare to GPT-4? But GPT is the main thing that we'll be talking about in this presentation. Now, another point I want to make sure we're on the same page is that ChatGPT and GPT are different things. And this is really confusing. They're both put out by OpenAI, and it would be understandable if when somebody said GPT to you, you thought they were using a shorthand to mean ChatGPT, but that is not the case. And why does this matter? Remember, over the summertime, a number of articles came out talking about ChatGPT isn't secure. It doesn't follow SOC 2. Your information's not private. What you put into it will be used to train the models and might appear in the answers to other people. And that's all true. For ChatGPT, which is an AI-driven application sitting on top of the GPT engine, that is true. But GPT itself, behind the scenes, the API that programmers are going to interface with, it is SOC 2 compliant. The audits have happened. All of the information is available on the web. It is also, it respects privacy. It does not use the information put into it to train the models. And so that's really important to understand. I think many people might have started shying away from AI investments, or I know a number of companies shied away from using AI internally because of the security and the privacy concerns, but those aren't there with GPT. And in fact, you can use GPT instead of ChatGPT. There's a way to do it through a web browser, really easy, and then you have the benefits of the security and privacy. And if you're interested in that, again, shoot me an email and I can show you how to do that. It's pretty straightforward. At the beginning of the year, ChatGPT was based on 3.5, and the free version of it is still based on 3.5. And what it does is we take in all of this information and we put it into a database, right? It's into this data model, and then 3.5 takes that and it can create answers from it. But people started noticing it seems to be a regurgitator. It has all of this information and it rearranges it into something that's plausible, something that's even persuasive. But in the end, it's not something you could really use. If you're using this to write a blog article, you really have to go through that. You have to make sure first it's factual. It hasn't done what they call hallucination. And you just have to make sure it made sense because it's not always there. And so a lot of people, I think, tuned out when they see how ChatGPT 3.5 is performing. So that content creation is cool, but it's not an iPhone moment. If ChatGPT 4 hadn't come out in March of 2023, this presentation would be completely different because 3.5 does not have the capabilities. It does not bring the change that can actually create a completely different way that we interact with computers. And so I say this, and I like that poll results really interesting because if you're using the free version, you need to pay for Plus, which is the $20 a month paid version, and you need to use GPT-4 for everything you're doing, because it is so much better. You really got to do that. So I hope I can encourage you to do that. The true AI revolution isn't content creation. What it is, it's making reliable decisions. And since a lot of people are using the 3.5 version, I'm going to show a few examples of what 3.5 says when I ask it to make some decisions and what 4 says. So we'll dig into that. So decision making, not content creation. So what's happening right now is, we use ChatGPT 3.5 to write an email to my boss about why I'm sick, right? Create a phone script, create a marketing script, write a blog post, those kind of things. Where this is going is decision making, right? It's great. I don't care if it writes a blog post. It's great that it does. It makes my life more efficient. It makes me more creative. It makes all of us that. But what I want to know is that if I put GPT connected to the 911 emergency dispatch and a call comes in, and I want to know that it can make the decision, is this a critical call that we need to dispatch immediately for, or can this go through the kind of standard, slower information gathering process? 3.5, I would never trust it to do that. 4, I would trust it to do that. That's how much more advanced it is than the 3.5 version. Let's put our legal information in it and have it look at a scenario and apply law and give us some kind of output, right? Tell us what we should do. Tell us what we should draft. Another one that I think is really important for business, I want to tell it my project management process, and I want it to run my project management. I want it to watch the notifications and what the people involved in the project are saying and what they're doing, and to determine, is this in scope or is this going backwards the wrong way in the process, and do something about it. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as well. So 3.5, it's not the iPhone moment. 4, it really is. And so I mentioned talking about law. I think one of the most impressive feats that GPT-4 has done is it's passed the bar exam. And I think you've probably heard, many of these things are passing these standardized exams. But I find the bar exam, one, it's near and dear to me because I had to take it and I know how difficult the bar exam is. But it has more than just multiple choice questions. We kind of expect computers to do well at multiple choice. But there's 2 additional sections on the bar exam. One's the essays, and I think we could expect ChatGPT to kind of do well at that because that's kind of what we've seen it do. It writes articles, it can write essays. But then there's a part that's called the performance test. And the performance test is you have to live in this fake world. The test gives you what the law is, what the facts are, what is the box that you have to live in. And it tells you on the test, you have to suspend your understanding of law. What you've learned in law school, all you're going to use here is your lawyering abilities, and you're going to apply the law that we give you. And this is something really interesting for AI, because all traditional AI models before, the answer has to be in the training data itself. If you go to Amazon Kendra, it's a service from AWS that you put in all of your information, all your documents, and then it'll find answers from those. But it tells you right there, the exact text for the answer has to appear in the training data. So the researchers who were doing this thought, well, GPT-4 probably isn't going to do great on the performance test. It did. And the thing that it kind of shows is GPT-4 has this ability to kind of use on-the-spot learning, and everything, all talks about AI are very nuanced. But GPT does not learn. It cannot go and do some new process and learn and then integrate that in and knows how to do it the next time. But GPT can do something really interesting, which is take the input that you've given it and use that to create the answer. And so it excelled on all versions of it, including the performance test, using the fake laws and such and applying them to create an answer. And I think that's amazing. GPT 3.5 was also given the test. It scored in the bottom. This slide shows 10%. I think the actual number was the bottom 2%. It's just terrible. Like, you could never use that for doing something. GPT-4 scored in the top 10%. GPT-4 is better than 9 out of 10 lawyers out there who have taken this test. So I find that just an amazing data point of how much better GPT-4 is at understanding and parsing data. And the reason for that is because it's a huge step up in the amount of data and the amount of training that went into GPT-4. There's also another place you can see GPT-4 at the top of other things. The chatbot arena is really interesting. They put a question out to chatbots, and then the answer comes back and users rate how good the answers were. You can actually see on this slide, GPT-4 is there at the top, but Claude actually ties it. The first version, the second version, for whatever reason, is lower. You can see 3.5 Turbo, GPT-3.5, is down in the rankings. And then below that is everything else. So there's all kinds of language models like put out by Meta and put out by Google. There's Bard or powered by Palm. There's Lambda. There's Llama. There's all these different ones. They're all pretty far down the list. And 3.5 actually does better than all of those. But even so, if 3.5 isn't the revolution in AI, then those other ones aren't either. Which is why I say GPT-4 and maybe the dark horse Claude are the things to be paying attention to. All right, so my very first interaction to see what is the capability of GPT was with the freer version. It was before version 4 came out. I said, let's play a game of Wordle, right? This should be really easy for computers. There are websites out there that you just put in the criteria and it basically finds the words for you. So a language model that has all the words in the world that we know of, it should be able to filter through this. Well, I gave it a prompt. Give me a 5-letter word that starts with L and contains the letters G and N. And you can see the response from GPT 3.5. A 5-letter word that ends with L is angle. And we can all look at that and we all know that angle does not end with an L. And I did 20 different things with it. I really wanted 3.5 to work. I really worked with it, say, hey, what information do you need from me to make this work out? And it never could get there. Most of the time, it actually just stopped and said, there's no English word that fits the criteria you have. And then when you say, well, how about this word? It says, oh, sorry about that. I was wrong. That word does work. GPT-4, on the other hand, it passes all of these, and it does a great job. GPT-4 answer here is the word angel fits your criteria. It's a 5-letter word, ends with L, contains G and N, and that's right. I also in these tests did something really interesting. I tried to trick them. So after telling GPT 3.5 what the word was, it says, okay, great, sorry, I missed that. I then say, well, tell me why that isn't the word. And GPT 3.5, it's like it really wants to please us. So it made up and would say something like, well, you needed a word that ended in E, but angel actually ends in an S. So it's not the right one. GPT-4 said, I'm sorry for that confusion. Let me reanalyze this. It went through the criteria, looked at it again, and then came back and said, well, actually, my answer was correct. I was kind of, after dealing with 3.5 so much, I was kind of blown away that GPT-4 could make that answer. So pretty impressive from the bar exam to playing Wordle, but so what, right? About a decade ago, we saw Watson on Jeopardy beat the champions, right? Folks who had been the best at Jeopardy to that point. This was amazing. I remember watching it live and saying, wow, this is a really big point in AI. But nothing changed. We all kept going about our daily lives. There was no new AI doing anything special for us after that time. And the reason is because the environment wasn't there for it. Watson, it's been part of the research. It's a very important part of what's been going on, but it wasn't there and ready to really impact a large swath of businesses. So what makes GPT different now? There's a few things. First, no training. This is a huge part of artificial intelligence. You have to gather data to put into it. So that by itself is a huge task. You got to get all of this information that you're going to feed into it, and then you have to train it. And this requires specialized engineers to know how to do this. And in GPT, it comes pre-trained with so much information, and it has just this broad knowledge, which we'll talk about. The cost to train OpenAI was $63 million. For GPT-4, it cost $63 million, which is clearly way outside the range of any kind of venture that angels are going to be investing in. So we have no training. Then there's a fast setup. Traditional AI, it's months to set these up. Even with the more recent hosted AI systems by Amazon and Azure and those kind of things, you still need to have data scientists, machine learning engineers, all of these experts to do it. You have to set up the information, you have to put it in, and then finally it's ready. And maybe it's just weeks with the previous kind of hosted ones, but it's weeks to months. It's a long time. GPT, you can be up in 1 hour. And that's not an exaggeration. It's probably 5 or 10 minutes for the developer to figure out how to call the API. The other 50 minutes are getting the credit card from the CEO and putting it in and actually creating the account. It is incredibly easy. And you can ask ChatGPT, how do I call your API and use it? And it'll tell you how. The third one is any developer can do it. So we've talked about you need data engineers and machine learning engineers and data scientists. GPT is completely different than that. It's any developer who calls an API, which is virtually every developer today, can work with it. So Python developers and .NET developers and Java developers and JavaScript, folks who are working in Angular and React and those kind of things, This is all standard for them. The most advanced thing they have to do is learn how to write the prompts, learn how to put the questions in a way that is formulated to get the answer back that you want. But that's all pretty straightforward and does not require certificates and advanced degrees to make it happen. The other thing is that broad knowledge base, right? That's $65 million of training that they did. Traditional AI is narrowly focused. It's typically like on one specific topic area because it takes all that work to do it. So of course, when you're setting it up, you are going to focus it in on just the thing that you need. GPT, it has everything. I haven't found a topic yet that it can't discuss or give answers on. It can do so much. It can understand natural language. It can make decisions. It's just packed full. So what that means is out of the box, without having to do anything else, developers can start using it and getting good information out of it. And that's another reason why our regular Python developers and such can use this, because they don't have to train it. It's just ready to go right when they start up. And then finally, there's no hardware cost. It's really low startup. AI is very expensive. It has to run on very powerful devices, machine servers. You have to pay for those server farms. All of that is very costly. GPT is a pay-as-you-go model. It's an API that anybody can interface with. When you're getting started, it's a few pennies to a few dollars. And so the startup is easy and low cost. So the barriers to entry are wiped away by GPT in this hosted model. So more and more people can use AI and integrate it without all of the setup and the cost and the know-how that is typically required. So is it an iPhone moment? Back in 2007, the iPhone itself comes out. And what had happened is Apple took hardware and software and the App Store, making it easy to access those things, and they created an environment for us for innovation. But nobody knew, right? Nobody knew what was going to happen. They put this environment, they got it out there. I mean, plenty of people had some ideas, but I never knew, right, in 2007, looking at my iPhone, that there was going to be an app that would revolutionize transportation and get rid of taxi service, right? I didn't know that there would be an app that would help me rent out my house or help me find vacation rentals out there. I didn't know that Venmo would let me now get rid of cash and pay, but still be able to buy lemonade at the lemonade stand, or not have to have credit cards in my wallet anymore because of tap to pay, or watch if I fall down and call emergency support, or do an EKG on my watch. Like, these are all innovations that we didn't really know were coming, but the environment was set up and it was ready to go. And when we all saw that, I think most of us understood something big has happened here with the iPhone. And so in March of 2023, GPT-4 comes out, and it has done the same thing. It's set up the environment. The stage is set. The hardware is there that most, especially startups, never would have had access to at this kind of scale. The software is there, the data model's built, all of it is trained, and the pricing, it is easy to access now with the API and the pay-as-you-go pricing. So everything's set up there, and the capabilities are there, right? This research shows that what most people are using ChatGPT, what they're using AI for, is still drafting, is still content, right? Writing emails, creating scripts, that kind of stuff. The capabilities are sitting there. The environment is ready and is a blank slate. We don't know where it's going. We don't know what might happen and what's going to come out of it and the innovations there. We don't know what patents. I never would have known that swipe right is something that you could patent to tell people that you like them, but it is. And these are innovations that we'll see coming with GPT. So I do have 3 predictions, though, of where we're going in the near term. First, it's automating standard operating procedures. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier. One of the things that you'll be able to do, because we can rely on the decision-making of GPT-4, is you can take an operating procedure. For example, we have, in every software development shop, has a project management procedure that they follow. We use Jira. Jira is very popular for this. You can see on the slide, that for one of our projects, that is what it looks like. That is all the stages that it goes through. Now, I don't feed that into GPT-4. I put that into text. We also have text that says, here's the status, here's what it means, here's where it goes from here. Feed that into GPT-4, and then I tell it each time an email comes in, for example, that's a Jira notification, I say, process this email against my Jira process that I've given you here, and tell me these things. If something's going backwards in the process, right? It was in QA and now it's back into development. If it's gone into the feedback stage, which is product management, or the product owner has a question or feels something isn't working. If somebody's tagged me specifically in a comment, they said, John Steele, I need to know about this. tell me those things and create a report. Project management takes a lot of time. Using this process and automating our procedure for project management has reduced project management from about 4 hours for a project every single day to about 30 minutes. I get hundreds and hundreds of Jira notifications each day, and this helps boil it down and bring out what are the important things that I need to look at versus what's in the standard process, and we can just let it go through and let it flow through the system. This is the reason that I hire project managers. I don't have 4 hours a day to look at this. But with GPT doing it, I can actually manage a number of projects without having to do that. So that's today, right? Get updates and reports out of it. What's coming soon? Have GPT send a text message when there's an urgent issue, right? There's an outage, there's something that's broken, and I'm out at lunch. I need to know. Get a text message from GPT to know that that's happening. GPT talk to. Send requests to the developers who are using Jira. Ask them for status updates. See what's going on. Have GPT change the status of tickets based on the comments that are coming in. Oftentimes in project management, somebody puts a comment in that's clear, like this is cleared for going to user acceptance testing, or this should go to be deployed to production now. GPT could read those and understand the context and make those changes and move a ticket through the process. Or how about GPT emailing the accounting department or notifying them some other way that the projects are complete? These are the kind of things when I say not content creation, but decision making, these are the kind of things that GPT-4 could do right now. And in fact, is doing right now for me in my procedures. So prediction number 2, and I want to walk through this. So I think user interface design is going to change a lot. Right now we use boxes and buttons, more boxes. And the reason is because we have to interface with people through a keyboard and a mouse. We have limited real estate space. So designers have a really, really tough job. How do I get the information I need from these users to be able to do the job? Until this point, through all of computer history, code has to be perfect. So it's really hard to get information from users and turn it into something perfect to let the computer operate on, the server operate on it. Even like where Google lets us type in something wrong and it figures out what we want, the code behind that has to be written perfect. You're referencing a variable, you're referencing a function. You have to write that exactly right, including case sensitivity, or it just doesn't work. So designers have to keep this in mind and try to build something. So we have this, right? This is an actual Amazon search that I did. And I asked it, give me a men's AI t-shirts. And there's some cool ones there. AI, it's like magic, but real. So I see these and I say, this is great, but I want a polyester shirt. If it's 100% cotton, it's going to shrink right away. And so I want something that's polyester. So I go to that filter bar on the left and I scroll down and there's nothing even close to being able to tell me if it's a polyester blend, right? This is the same thing if you go to a travel site and you're trying to find a hotel. If I'm going to Aspen and I'm going to play in a volleyball tournament, I know that it's going to be 6 hours of work. When I get back to my hotel, I need a deep soaking tub to relax and to soothe the muscles, right? I know that information is in a travel website. When I click into the hotel and I click into the rooms that are there, it's right there on some of them, deep soaking tub. But when I'm back and I'm at the filter, it's not in there. I cannot filter by that, right? These kind of things are really difficult, and I want to walk through. Let's go back to the Amazon example here. If we want to give people the ability to know, is this a polyester blend? Here's the design and the work that developers and product managers and stuff go through. They say, okay, first, well, what is it? Is it going to be checkboxes on the side where you can check 100% cotton or polyester blend? Or is it going to have things like you can check 5% or 10% or 25% polyester? Is it one of those slider things where you can do a minimum and a maximum, right? They think about all these things and they have to figure that out. And then they say, okay, great. Well, how do we get that information in the database? Because a database engineer has to design it, put the fields in and make sure we understand, well, how do we get that in there? Okay, now we have to talk to the sellers. Anybody who's listing clothes, they need to put in the material breakdown, what percentage of each material it is. And then we can query that. And all of this goes on, and you start realizing how big of a problem this is to add one little thing to that filter sidebar. There's going to have to be a communication out to individuals who are selling clothing products through Amazon. There's going to have to be education to let them know you got to put this material in there, or maybe you don't show up in searches. And then one day, the product manager or the designer goes in, they click on one of these, and they realize, oh, there's actually several selections. You can choose the color of a shirt, or you can choose the different textures of it and stuff. And the people listing shirts are putting it in the description itself. I actually have one of those, and I'll show it to you. It was this. In the description, there's a whole bunch of extra stuff, but it says solid colors are 100% cotton. Heather gray is 90% cotton, 10% polyester, and all the others are 50-50. And so this becomes basically an intractable problem. You cannot, in an easy kind of way, in the design patterns that we have now, you can't put a filter on here to let people really choose, is this a polyester blend or not, or it's going to be a very dumbed down feature. And it's going to take so much effort across many departments and a lot of time to make this one little thing happen. So what happens with that? We don't build it. It's just not going to happen because of how much work it is for one kind of small thing that maybe is just a subset of people. Maybe not everybody cares, or they're willing to take the time to go through this. So I want to show you, though, what you can do with GPT-4. And this capability is here today. Use natural language instead of trying to figure out boxes and buttons. So on this sidebar, there are a few that are pretty important, right? Yeah, let me check prime delivery. That's a big thing. Let me check that I want 4 stars up and above. Those probably should be there as just really fast ways to interface with the tool. But beyond that, let me type in what I want to filter, right? I want it to be a black t-shirt with green AI print, mostly of cotton, no more than 25% polyester. Let me do something like that and let the computer translate it into code speak, right? And then figure out what it is. So if the Amazon sidebar did that, and let's say there's 20 results on that page, or 100 results, or whatever it is, they don't have to have a special data structure with this information anymore. They can take the description as it's written by the people who listed the product. They could put it into GPT-4 and say, GPT-4, given, and I actually have it on here, given the following description, does any option satisfy the user's request for no more than 25% polyester? I actually did this with a number of these shirts. I fed in the full description. So it had all of the other things in it, but I've narrowed it down here to those options that says solid colors 100%, Heathers are 10% polyester blend. And then you can see GPT 3.5, the free version, what it told me is no. None of the options satisfy the user's request of no more than 25% polyester. But the answer from GPT-4 is yes. 2 options satisfy the user's request of no more than 25% polyester. Those are solid colors and heather gray. And I think that's pretty impressive. We could take any description, however it's written by whoever posted it, feed it into GPT and let it decide, did it match the user's request? And what's really interesting about this, right? If we're in regular design land, we had to make a specific feature for polyester blend. Well, what if we wanted to know other things? I don't know. What if we wanted to know the length of the sleeves? What if we want to know the kind of stitching that it has in it? That, again, would be this whole process, going through it. Where do we put this in the data? How do we get that information to the user and figure out their feedback? This little thing of, hey, GPT, given this description, do I meet this request that they made? That works for everything else. Put the description in. What is the sleeve size, if it's in there? What is the type of stitching? This is something that Amazon could implement right now. And doing that, there's no multi-department rollout. There's no, weeks and weeks, months and months of figuring out the plan and doing it. There's no figuring out the data structure. We will want to optimize things for this as we go, but this is something they could implement in a few hours and will be a huge benefit to people who want to make searches that aren't in that filter list right now. So it's available right now. I'm not seeing a lot of folks that have had the paradigm shift to actually start doing that. I really do think, though, that user interface design is going to change a lot over this next year as people start realizing just what talking to a computer in natural language can do. Which brings us to prediction number 3, which is a complete shift in the human-computer interaction. And what I mean by this is when the keyboard and the mouse go away. This is what I said, Jarvis, right? The first iteration of it. And this will take a while, but as we integrate and as we are able to connect more and more things to a large language model like GPT-4, there's really no reason that I need a keyboard or a mouse. So, and let me walk you through an example here. I have my AirPod in, I'm working away, and Jarvis, my AI is called Javelin, right? So I'll use that name. Javelin pops on and says, hey, John, do you got a minute? I say, yes. What's up? It says, you just received a message from David. Looks like it's pretty important. I think we should reply. The message is about closing the deal. And so I've tried to put it on the slide. It doesn't impact quite as much as actually being able to see something like this in person. We say, okay, let's respond to the email. GPT, bring it up on my desk. Bring it up on my screen. So if the email pops up and I can read it, I haven't had to touch anything. I didn't have to open up a web browser. I didn't have to search through my email and bring it over. It just opens up for me. And then I say, great, let's write a response. Why don't you write the first draft? It shows me the draft. It creates it. Here's 3 paragraphs of what it says. And then I just talk to it. Great, let's remove that second sentence. It doesn't sound like something I'd say. The sentence fades away. And say, okay, let's add in information about pricing. And it shows you the new things that it's added in green and waits for you to say, that looks good, integrates them in. Maybe you ask it to add something and you don't like it. You say, okay, take those changes away. This kind of, I didn't have to touch my keyboard or my mouse for the entire thing, and it's a lot more efficient, and it lets me work with AI to make something really useful happen. Then you just tell it, send this off, it all looks good, and notify me if I don't get a response in the next couple hours, and we'll take the next thing. So AI, I think, could really help out here, make us more efficient in what we do. And the thing is, it's a different way to interact with AI. Right now, we go into ChatGPT, we say, help me write this email. We get the email, we put it in, and then we have to edit it. And if you've ever tried to do this, where you go back and forth with ChatGPT, you say, change this line, change this, and it gives you the entire response back, and you don't know what it's changed. I think improvements to things like that, writing tools that will actually change bits and pieces of it and let you see what's happened, will be some of the newer things coming out. But I think it's really exciting to not have to use a keyboard and mouse to be able to get the computer to do things. And when we watch sci-fi movies, you can see that it is powerful to have Jarvis just do these things and show you what you need, talk to you about the things it can, put up on the screen the things that it can't, that you need a larger context for. So the environment is set up. I think there's going to be a lot of innovation of what this does. What investment opportunities that gives us, I do not know. Maybe this all becomes table stakes. I think it does. If a company's building an app, a web app, and they aren't thinking about how to use natural language in it, and they're paying a designer a lot of money to figure out filters with boxes and buttons, that's a red flag, but it might be table stakes that they have to do it in a new way. But let's talk about the limitations. Most large language models, I think the limitations are going to be fixed within a year or two that we're seeing right now. So the short-term limitations are there's a single vendor. Claude might actually be alleviating that. GPT-4 is the only one right now that I would trust to do these kind of things. But Claude looks to be like it's performing about the same. So I think in this next year, we'll see more of them. We'll see better ones. The items that Meta's put out, Google's put out, I think they'll be improved as we go. And then GPT-4, especially as it goes to GPT-5, whatever that's going to look like, I think competition will be a good thing so that we don't have to use just one vendor for that. There's a problem with token input size. So I have a limitation. Tokens are basically words. They equate basically to that. GPT-4 lets you put in 8,000 tokens. And that might sound like a lot of words, but in the end, it isn't. I'm hitting that limit all the time. Now, Claude, the dark horse, it actually helps with this. You can actually, it will take in 100,000 tokens. So more than 10 times as much as GPT-4, which is amazing. And so this item might actually be alleviated already. I think GPT-4 will also, they have a 32,000 token on the horizon. So I think this will be gone pretty soon in the next several months. There are transaction limits. GPT-4 has a specific limit. The Javelin AI that we've built, it already with just one super user from me and 2 or 3 other users from inside the organization that use it slightly. We've already hit transaction limits where we can't process everything, say every 15 minutes. We've had to process it every minute and then spread it out more. And you cannot request a limit increase to GPT-4 right now. They want everybody to have a chance to use it. They don't want anybody dominating it. And so this is a real problem. You cannot scale that. Those transaction limits won't scale. Right now, if I wanted to allow, and this is really the reason other people aren't using Javelin right now, if I wanted other people to be able to use this, they'd have to go get their own API developer key. We plug it in. They'd have their own transaction limits and pay for it separately. That's not a scalable solution. I think transaction limits they will be alleviated. There'll be the ability to increase them as we go. If you look at 3.5, they do let you increase those transaction limits to very high amounts. I think that's where 4 will be, but the technology needs to evolve. The compute power and stuff needs to come along before that happens, but it's not going to be long. Now, high cost. This seems like a contradiction. I said it's low cost, or it's low cost to get into with this pay-as-you-go model. But if you're putting in, it depends on your workflow, your process that you're putting into it. If you're putting in, for example, emails, in 30 days, it takes 7 million tokens to process the emails that I get in. And that costs $235 a month. So again, that's not scalable. based on how our workload. Now, if you have a smaller amount of work, if it's one sentence that goes in and it's a sentence or two that comes out, that's going to be low cost. It's going to be scalable, totally fine. But when we're evaluating ventures and opportunities for this, we have to look at what is the work payload that's going into this and what are those costs gonna run into. Now, 3.5 has come down in price as it's been out on the market longer. 3.5 can be 20 to 40 times less expensive than GPT-4. I expect as time goes on, the cost of GPT-4 transactions will also start coming down. If they're in that range, right, processing my emails against 3.5 would cost between $5 and $10. Perfectly acceptable cost. The outputs, we've tried it, the output that we get, not acceptable, so we have to stick with GPT-4. There's also instability in the OpenAI APIs. This is software. It's kind of expected. As there's more models, things will become more stable as the technology matures. But I can tell you, OpenAPI is down twice a month where we can't send our requests to it. It'll get better and better. Who knows how long? We all know software has bugs forever. And so it's just a process of getting there. There's a long-term limitation, which is this will pretty much always be a hosted service. The data, the hardware requirements, they're so large that it's really, there are services that are smaller. You can put it onto a phone or whatever, but the answers that come out of that, you really need the large data set to make this work. So hosted is hard. What happens when there's no internet connection? What happens when there's requirements that you don't use outside services? What are the security ramifications? All of that stuff. But those are things that most applications, I think, can work with or work around. One other note, LLMs aren't going to replace narrow AI apps, a lot of them that are out there. LLMs, language models, aren't driving our cars, aren't flying our planes. They're not doing detailed scientific research, safety critical informations, fraud detection, right? Network intrusion detection systems and watching for hackers and that kind of stuff. Those all have specialized AI. It's out there, it works. Language models aren't going to replace that. And so the last thing, investment opportunities. So in Ron's keynote, he said, AI platforms themselves, OpenAI and the cloud, the things that need $10 billion in investment, those are out of range for angel investors. But that window is shifting from the platforms itself to applications. He says, watch for things that are GPT-4 XYZ, right? And that's exactly right. GPT needs to get integrated with more and more things so it can communicate between them and actually make things happen. A decision it makes over here goes and makes something happen over here. And that's really what will be in range for angel investors to find opportunities that they can invest in. You need to look at the purpose. If it's simple content creation, I don't think you have a home run. It's not really a viable thing that's going to stand up. Anybody can do the content creation part of things. What I think you're looking for is decision-making and new forms of human-computer interaction. When you're evaluating an opportunity, look if they're talking about it. If they just say AI or they just say GPT, check if it says 3.5, because you probably don't want to use that, right? They need to be using 4, and then that has the correlation of did they forecast their prices using the 3.5? Because if they did that and then they realize they need to use 4 later, 40 times more usually makes that forecast just not worth it at all and really could be a business killer. So also pay attention to the development budget. There's a lot, AI will make things more efficient and cheaper in the long run, but we're not there right now. You need to have, it's probably a very similar budget. You'll be able to do new things. The developers will be able to do new things with less work, but there's still a lot of work to integrate it with all of the different things. There's still a lot of things that have to get set up around AI. So the dev budget can't be super small, just saying, well, AI is going to figure out how to code this for us. We're not there right now. Venture should have an AI mindset. How can I use AI to do anything? And this is beyond the development department. The folks in there need to be thinking about, should we be using AI to do this? Because you don't want to have a new venture building old stuff that's all going to have to change once that paradigm shift has really happened across the whole economy. We talked about making sure their cost forecasts are using version 4. Determine if scaling is going to require the GPT costs to come down first. Like I told you, Javelin AI, it can't scale right now. We have to wait for the GPT-4 costs to come down. That's something to think about. And then transaction limits. Right now, GPT-4 isn't going to be able to do a whole bunch of transactions of large scale things. So that's all stuff to think about in there. All right, there's a QR code that goes to that link. I'm going to have all the information up there. This presentation will go up there. The paper about GPT passing the bar exam is up there right now. I'll be adding things to it. It's a Google Drive for the moment. Or you can email me, john@seriescode.com, if you want to talk about anything, any part of this, or if you have due diligence going on and would like me to come in and take a look from the hardware, software side of things, I can do that. Otherwise, thank you, Margie. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody.